Hi there. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're coming from. We're so excited to have you with us for our Give Thanks mini webinar. My name is Amy Alamar, and I am joined by my colleague and friend, Kate Levitt. She'll be on the chat and the Q&A to help you out as we go along. We are also joined by a very, very special guest, Evelyn, and she is a counselor using Give Thanks. So she's actually going to be spotlighted further on in the webinar. Thank you so much for coming, Evelyn. We're thrilled to have you. So today we're going to be talking about using gratitude in your counseling practice. And of course, we know that we have some teachers and counselors and other here, right? Tech and curriculum coaches, some administrators. So thank you so much for responding to the poll. Really appreciate it. We see that almost all of you here have never used Give Thanks before, so we'll do a quick, brief intro to the tool. You can always sign up after for a demo if you want to go a little deeper and see how it would work with your school or community. And so I'm just going to end the poll right now. I want to thank you all for doing that with us. And we're going to go ahead and look at the agenda for today. So very quickly, we'll look at gratitude practice and its connection to social emotional learning by looking at the backed benefits in research of how do we know gratitude works and what does it look like. And then we'll talk about gratitude practices in technology, mostly for equity reasons, really, that we've developed this tool so that it can be used equitably within our school communities. And we'll talk specifically about strategies for counselors working with other counselors, working with staff members, and working with staff members to support students directly, and of course, working with students directly. So we know it's really important that you know your students. And this is sort of where we start. When we talk about social emotional learning, we talk about counseling practices, we really want to put this as our backbone, really knowing who your student is and helping them to understand who they are themselves. So what I would love is just to start off in the chat. You can do it privately to us. You can do it publicly to the group. You know, we are our own community here at Give Thanks. We would love to know, what are some ways you as a counselor, or if you're here in some other capacity, right, your school counselors maybe support student efforts to identify their personal and academic strengths to help them with their social emotional growth, right? Or maybe with their college applications or some other capacity that you're counseling them with. So if you could just put that in the chat, we would love to know sort of ways that you are using this. And, you know, some replies that we heard in the past would be, you know, regular conversations, just talking with them and learning about that. Really thinking about checking in with the teachers. And I see somebody has chatted us student study teams. So using the student study teams to look at the student strengths, great to talk about that. And so how are we helping our students to hear that? And feel free to share that along as we move through this, as you think, as we talk about using gratitude practice, kind of thinking about maybe, oh yeah, I've done this or I've done that, would be really great to see what you're doing in your community. So we know that gratitude practice can support student and staff well-being with their emotional growth. And so we're going to have a lens mostly toward the student, the direct use with the student, but I want to just step back. We're a tool that can be used within staff and can be used among staff and then with staff and students. So we just want to really focus on that. And we'll review a little bit of the gratitude science behind it. So Give Thanks was founded based on the research. We know that gratitude practice, true practice, helps to do all of these things. And today, a special focus on the self-esteem, reducing that stress and anxiety, rewiring that brain for resilience. And we know that research tells us when we focus on the positive and what we are grateful for, it helps us to develop these things and truly changes the way that we seek positive in the world. And we want to nurture motivation, certainly for academic progress, but also motivation intrinsically for other goals in the students' lives. We know that journaling, letter writing, and looking at our strengths are helpful ways to access this gratitude practice. And we do that through our tool. And I'll share that with you with some specific strategies. So who are we and why are we here? I want to just preface this by saying we are an online app that can be used in schools and other communities. You do not have to subscribe to our app to use the practices we share with you today. Everything we share, this presentation, a recording of it, the actual deck, and all of the lessons I will share with you are free and open for you to use, and we will share them with you. We can do that directly after with an email, or you can always contact us if you want to be redirected to something. So everything I share with you, you can use openly without our tool if you want. But let me show you what the tool does really briefly. We are a curriculum online that you can use to regularly check in and help students and staff develop a true practice of gratitude. We aim to be school-wide to create true community. What does it look like? It looks like students and staff sending notes of gratitude. You can customize these tags at the bottom here. So if your school focuses on an area of social emotional competencies, we can put those in here. When they are tagged, kids can also do reflection tasks. These can be customized for your community, or we have a template set as well. Once they do that, once they've got their tag set in there, they can look at their strengths. So imagine you are a student and imagine you are a counselor working with a student and you want to help them identify what are their strengths. They can physically look at this chart that shows in our school community with the social emotional competencies we focus on, this is where you lie. Does this resonate with who you are as a person? Does this surprise you as a person? And they can kind of see where they're at. So this is nice. They can also see where they've given as well. So they can look at what they're looking for in other students, what they value in other students. And then finally, we share data on sort of how kids are engaged. This is just sample data. This does not mean anything in your school community, but you could imagine if you saw that a student is giving more than they're getting, right? Or not getting anything, how you could address inclusivity issues right from the start. Or if you suspect even that a student may be left out, you could proactively use some of our practices to welcome the students in. We have a practice, for example, called the gratitude wave, where everybody sends a gratitude to one person, maybe a new staff member that joined, maybe a student we're concerned about, and then they get a whole big wave of gratitude. So you can imagine there are ways to proactively be inclusive in your environment and identify areas of social isolation should you not be seeing them beforehand. So we're going to review some supportive practices that we've seen in use with school counselors. We want to, again, at the beginning, I told you, sometimes as a counselor, you're probably stretched, or your school counselor, if you're not one, is probably stretched to help support staff well-being. That means collaborating with their own colleagues, right? But also supporting staff in their work with students. So we're going to look at that. And then your work, of course, supporting students directly. So we want to anchor your conversations around gratitude by looking at their positive contributions and recognizing who the student is. So thinking about how they are positive within our environment and what are we recognizing them for. And so one way to do that is to help them recognize themselves in there. Now, again, this is open and free for you to use. These are strategies. We have a whole curriculum of routines. This is what it looks like, and you can go check each of them out on your own. We're going to focus on a couple here today. Here's an example of what one looks like. Remember, I talked about the strengths inventory and looking at that bar graph and having a student think, is this who I am as a student? Is this who I am as a person? So this actually walks you through the process of helping students look at their own strengths inventory, helping them to reflect on who they are. We also provide a slide deck for any lesson that requires it. So here are a few of our suggested lessons for this kind of practice. Now, again, these are within that bigger menu I shared with you, but of course we start, okay, if you'll look on the left, we're looking at classroom instruction. So this is supporting teachers with students. If you go down to the next row, we're looking at counseling sessions directly with students. And then the bottom row are those staff meetings or staff interactions, really, you could call it. And understanding that all of this translates to distance and hybrid learning because it's an online platform. So when we're looking at classroom instruction and conferencing, Our main action we're thinking about helping teachers plan the instruction or maybe self-student-led conferences that focus on their strengths. So we have that strengths inventory lesson. We also have one called New Gratitude. This is where we help students identify kids they haven't given to as much or maybe at all, and we direct them to give new gratitude. And in our tool, it actually can flag kids that you've never given to. Counseling sessions, supporting students by reviewing that heat map we shared with you. So how can we identify who are the students we want to work with, right? We can use it in that way. And then when we're working with them, how do we talk to them about that isolation they may be feeling? How do we uncover what's happening there and direct them to that strengths inventory, right? We have two practices called messages received and messages given. And so what this does is have them look at different messages they've received from other students or staff, and they can kind of examine who they are based on those, but then also what are they recognizing in others? So what are the messages that they're giving out in their community? What do they need from their community? What are they identifying? Which tags are most important to them? And then finally, within our staff meetings, nurturing staff well-being, so that appreciation of one another and sharing this practice so that it's truly a community practice. We have that gratitude wave I mentioned where we all send gratitude to one person that can make them feel very included. And then group gratitude. If we're working in a small group, maybe a division group, maybe grade level teams or subject specific teams, then we could look at like, okay, within our group, we have an actual practice on how do we give thanks within a group. So those are just some examples of how you could use our tool in our practices. And I want to welcome Evelyn Kopp. I hope I'm saying it right, Kopke, because our relationship is all virtual and I don't know that I've ever asked you. So I'll ask you to unmute yourself. We so appreciate you being here. She's a school counselor at one of our dear schools, Adams Friendship Middle School. And they've been using Give Thanks just over a year now, or just about a year. Is that right?
Just about a year. We
Yeah.
started in September, and we really, really like using Give Thanks at Adams Friendship Middle School. A little bit about our school district. So we're located in what would be considered South Central Wisconsin. We're a very rural school district. We're about 550 square miles. Um, and we are the third poorest county in Wisconsin. So we have a lot of needs. Our students have a lot of needs and our staff have a lot of needs because it is a challenge building up students' resilience and helping staff to maintain their resilience as well. And this program really has been so very beneficial for our students and our staff. So we rolled it out in September and we started with staff first, just to kind of get kind of a temperature gauge on how they were feeling about it. One of the best things is this program is so incredibly easy to use. We sign on with Google Sign On and we are ready to rock and roll. And staff get so incredibly excited and happy when they get the email of somebody gave me a give thanks. I wonder what it was for. I wonder, what it could be. So it really is a morale boost for our teachers. Um, then once they were comfortable with it, we rolled it out to our students. We started with their individual classes and then whole grade levels. It may also be helpful to know that we've been in school since September. One of the benefits of being rural is that COVID has not hit us so hard. So we have been able to go to school full time since September. So in classes, we actually have Give Thanks Friday. So every Friday, students are instructed to go on and we do different challenges through the school year. Like this past week, we're actually out for a snow day today. It's snowing out. Wasn't expecting it. But this week, the challenge was I wanted them to thank somebody in the building that they wouldn't ordinarily thank, particularly targeting like custodians, your maintenance, your kitchen staff, because they sometimes get forgotten. And students don't always realize kind of what they're doing or how important their job is. So we target different groups of people. So that kind of we spread the give thanks everywhere, and it just has been really successful. It's really nice because teachers can look and see every message that kids send, to make sure that they're sending appropriate messages, and also to make sure that kind of they're building on those skills. It's not just like, thanks for this. Let's expand on that. Now I'm in a middle school, so we have fifth grade through eighth grade. So our fifth graders, okay, let's expand. Let's learn how to give thanks in like paragraphs. And in eighth grades, let's dig deep. What can you really be thankful for? Um, our school traditionally has done a lot with gratitude. In years prior, we had students keep gratitude journals because we know all of the benefits of gratitude. This program has made it easier. And if we do have a class out in quarantine or certain students out in quarantine, those expectations are still there that, hey, you can still do this program because all you have to do is log on and give thanks. Um, so it really has been quite successful, and we enjoy using it a lot.
Thank you so much, Evelyn, for sharing that. I hope if you have the time, you could stay, and afterwards, if there are some specific
Of
questions,
course.
you can address them. But it just helps to hear sort of a real life situation and how you might use it as a counselor. And you are sort of supporting in so many areas right now, especially during, this challenging time that we're all facing in education. So that is really helpful. I appreciate also, I want to point out that, she noted that the teachers can look at it. And so yes, there's monitoring, but more than that, she points out to the fact that you can actually use this as a touch point for teaching moments. So if it's not, the fully fleshed out paragraph you were hoping for from your sixth grader, that's an opportunity to check in and have them continue and dig deeper on that, as opposed to just, oops, marking it wrong, right? And so we really think of this as a way to teach some of those soft skills, social skills that, sometimes get missed in other areas of writing. Wonderful, thank you. So I'll just quickly talk about how can you make it fit in your practice. So she talked about how it fits in their practice a little bit, and we like to kind of give you some ideas. So, just thinking in your own context, your learning community, do you have regular staff meetings? Are they virtual? Are they live? How do they work? Do you typically give gratitude at the end of them? Is this something that might work for you? I know personally, when at the end of meetings we do gratitude, like in a Zoom chat, it can be sort of difficult to catch everything as it scrolls. So this is like a nice way to keep it a little more private. Also, like shout outs are fun for the person who shouted out, but not everybody gets shouted out. So it's kind of nice equalizer there. But also thinking about like newsletters, a prompt, don't forget to log in and give thanks or something like that. You could use it in if you don't want to take up sort of airtime for it. Then your counseling sessions, check-ins with the students, conversations with the students, either informal or formal, maybe an advisory if you run it, or if you have some sort of a focus on SEL as a counselor. And then finally, for classroom teachers or counselors supporting them, this could be a regular routine, an open or close routine, like an exit ticket, but it could also be a process check after an activity, like those group gratitude or partner gratitude. And then during student-led conferences, certainly that strengths inventory is valuable as a jumping off point for those student-led conferences. So I remind you with some of our sample practices we showed you earlier, and I invite you to kind of reflect and think, okay, where does this fit into my practice, whatever your role is? And I know we have a mix of folks here. Where could you see applying this, either through our tool or just using these strategies? And I'd love to welcome you to put those in the chat. Again, you can privately do it. We love the tips and ideas you guys have, but I see some of you have been more public, and I really appreciate that. So if you could kind of think about where you feel like this would fit in your practice, that would be fantastic. And some of the things, oh, I see somebody's writing, I love the gratitude wave. Thank you. Me too. That's been a really popular one for inclusivity, especially you mentioned, Evelyn, having staff that aren't always seen or heard as often. And let's not forget the office administrators, right, who maybe even see your kids, but often it's in such a procedural way that they don't connect with the kids. So wonderful. Other ways that you think you might be able to use this tool, we really appreciate. And it looks like one of you even shared that you are doing weekly SEL lessons and lunch bunch and engagement activities. And I appreciate that. I think that's a wonderful way for you to share out with students. And you mentioned even with family, which is fantastic. Another one of you said the use of motivational interviewing techniques. I'd love to learn more about that. I think that sounds really exciting. And then definitely going to try the strengths inventory. I wonder if I can grow that and have the students design the rubric for it. Oh, we'd love to hear if you do that, how that works for you. So keep the ideas coming in. Let us know what you're thinking, how you might consider using this. And certainly if you do, let us know how it's going for you. I want to be mindful of your time. These are the resources we promised you. You will have, they're all linked up, and you will have a bit.ly on the last slide, I believe, of how to get to our deck. And then as soon as we can get the recording ready, it will be emailed to you, I think, tomorrow. So you'll see a recording of this and you'll have access to the deck. Thank you so much for joining us. We are thrilled that you were able to make it and appreciate your time. We hope you'll save March 4th for our next mini webinar that will focus on building community and well-being through gratitude. Thank you to Evelyn for joining us. Thank you to Kate, and thank you to all of you. We really appreciate your participation in our community.